Let's begin. Today's daf is Yutes. We have a beautiful daf ahead of us. We are picking up 19. We are picking up on Yud Chesed Beis 18b, and we are picking up last two lines on the bottom. Two lines are from the bottom. Our shir this morning is dedicated by Ayala and Sarah Steinberg in honor of the yahrzeit of Ayala's mother, Elia Daphna Bas Yosef. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, her neshama, Chaim Aliyah, and the family in Nechama. So we'll say, let's begin. So remember again, yesterday we spoke about the pasuk. The Gemara quoted the pasuk from Yecheskel, and the pasuk spoke about the idea that the big day kahuna have to be made from bad, have to be made from linen. So the pasuk the Gemara discussed was pe'eri pishtim hiyu al rosham u'michnasei pishtim hiyu al masnehem lo yachkeru bayaza. So now the Gemara says, what does it mean, my lo yachkeru bayaza? What does that phraseology mean, bayaza? Rabbi lo yachkeru b'makom shemazin. That the kohen will say cannot wear his big day kahuna in a place where he sweats excessively. Kidisanyas, we learned in a brayso. Kishem chogrin, when the kohen puts on his belt, the avnate, ein chogrin lo lemata mimasnehen velo lemala me'atzilehen. The kohen shouldn't put on the belt below his hips and not above his elbows. If you look at Rashi says lemata mimasnehen makom shenichpa v'nofal shuman habeten alek libasa. So we'll say this refers to the area of the stomach, of the area right below the stomach. That if a person has a little bit of flesh that goes over, if the belt, the avnate goes underneath the stomach, that's a place where a person sweats. So therefore, again, he can't wear it there. Not above the elbows. And we'll say this is actually interesting. Look at Rashi. He says, marfakan shekori kudo lefisha sham hayad shochet tamid alatzala osumazia. You also can't, this is talking about under the armpits. Above the elbows, reference to under the armpits. You can't put the belt too high up that it's underneath the armpits either, because that's also a place where a person excessively sweats. So where should it be placed? Ella, top of your test, keneged atzila yedehen. Rather, Rabbi say the belt should be worn opposite the area of the elbows, essentially on the torso. But interestingly enough, it's an area, the avnate was worn an area on the torso above the waist. The waist area, there was a concern that could be an area of excessive sweat. So it was worn actually above the waist area, opposite where the elbows are. Amar Rashi, Amar li Huna bar Nasan. So Rashi said as follows. Huna bar Nasan said to me, listen to this. Zibna chada hava kamina kamei di izgader malka. So Huna bar Nasan said, one time, I was standing with Izgader Malka. Who's Izgader Malka? Rashi says, Kach shmo umelech parashaya. He was one of the Persian kings. Izgadar was one of the Persian kings. So what happens? Huna bar Nasan is standing with Izgadar. Vahavi midli leheminoi. And my belt was riding up. My belt was going too high. Vitisi nihile. And Izgadar Malka moved my belt down for me. Va'amrli. And Izgadar the king said to me, Mamlechas kohanim v'gai kadosh ksiv b'chu. So Izgadar Malka said to me, Huna bar Nasan, listen, if you're going to be a mamlechas kohen v'gai kadosh, you got to look the part. Fix yourself up. So Imam he fixed my belt up because he said this was unbefitting of a Jew to walk around in a less than regal fashion. So can you imagine this? So ki asay kamei da meimar. So Huna bar Nasan said, when I said this over in front of Meimar, Amar lei, he said to me, ikayim becha v'hayu malachim umanecha. So this is actually quite beautiful. So Ameimar said to me, Huna bar Nasan, that when his Gadar Malka did this, he was Mekayim the Pasik, Vahayu Malachim Umnayach. I'm sorry. And the kings will be your attendants. There was a reference in the Messianic era, ultimately again, where the kings of the nations of the world will attend to the Jews. So here you have his Gadar Malka going ahead and fixing the belt of Huna bar Nasan. Incredible. Tanan Hassam. So now another interesting statement, another interesting Mishnah. Kohen shelaka be'etzbo. We'll say if a Kohen got an injury on his finger, so what does he do? Korich ale gemi b'mikdash. He can we'll say gemi is like a type of reed, like a type of grass. So he could go ahead, instead of if he has a cut on his finger, he could tie a piece of gemi around his cut in the Beis Hamikdash, avalo b'medina. But now outside of the Beis Hamikdash. I will say, now here, there are two things going to occur over here. There's a Hilchos Shabbos discussion, as well as a big day kahuna discussion. So take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Korech ale gemi, B'shas avoda shegnaihu shetira shamakaso. So the Kohen is permitted to tie a piece of grass onto his wound because it's not appropriate that he should have an exposed wound during the avoda. He goes on va'afagav digemi masi maka v'chol davar sheishu mishum refuah asr mishum shavus gzeira shami yiskok samamanim hani mili b'medina. Avalo b'mikdash, aval b'mikdash lo gazu mishum shavus. We'll say this is two topics happening over here. Number one, the idea is in general, one is not permitted to engage in medicinal healing on Shabbos. Why is that? It's a rabbinic prohibition, we'll say, against schikas saman. Medicines were made through the grinding up of herbs, and therefore, again, I have a concern that one would come to grind up herbs. So therefore, what? So therefore, you can't take medicine on Shabbos. That is a very, very general statement. There are cases where you can. It doesn't apply to all situations, but bigadol. One is not permitted to take medicine on Shabbos or engage in forms of medicinal healing, lest one come to grind up herbs. That's called a shvus. It's a dirabban. It's called a shvus. There is a concept that says that dinei dirabban or shvusin do not apply in the Beis Hamikdash. All right, dirabbanos don't apply in the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, again, the Kohen has an injury on his finger. He is permitted to go ahead and put the reed on his finger on Shabbos inside the Beis Hamikdash, but not outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara says, "V'im lahotzi mimeno dam." But if his goal ultimately again is to draw blood out of the wound, kan v'kan aser, then ultimately both in the Beis Hamikdash as well as outside of the Beis Hamikdash, we'll say this will be aser. Now the reason for that is Rashi says, "Dechaburahu v'ser da'oraisa." We'll say once your intention is to draw blood, that's a chabura, which I will say again is an issue of shchita, and now we're dealing with isurim da'oraisa, not just simply dirabbanans. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Brei Rabbi Chia, lo shano elegemi. When do we say that a Kohen could do this? Right? When could he apply something to his wound in the Beis Hamikdash? That's only if it's a reed. It's a reed, a blade of grass. Aval tziltzul katan. We'll say tziltzul katan literally means, Rashi says, a bendel. A bendel. If he puts a little belt on it, right? Literally, tziltzul katan is a small belt. If he puts more of like a garment, something more substantive on it, then that is going to be a problem. Why? Not because of Shabbos, yitor begadim. Because I will say, then it looks like to that what? That he's adding on to the big day kahuna. So we'll say that's Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chia. So ultimately, the license for a Kohen, we'll say this is now leaving aside Hilchos Shabbos. Already took care of Hilchos Shabbos. You could bandage any kind. You could put the gemi, you could put the reed of grass on the wound on on Shabbos in the Beis Hamikdash. Even though outside of the Beis Hamikdash, such an act to be aser d'Rabbanan. In the Beis Hamikdash, you're permitted to do so because again, isurei d'Rabbanan do not apply in the Beis Hamikdash itself. However, again, if he's putting on a tziltzul katan, literally a small belt or a more significant bandage or garment, then you have a problem. Why? Because of yitor begadim. Rabbi Yochanan lo amru yitor begadim ela b'makom begadim. What Rabbi Yochanan says, the issue of a Kohen wearing additional clothing is only a problem if what? If the additional clothing is worn in a place where he's wearing other big day kahuna. But aval shelo b'makom begadim, people say if it's not in a place where he wears big day kahuna, for example, on his finger, then lo havi yitor. Then Rabbi says there's no problem of additional kohanic vestments. Says the Gemara. The seifok lei mishum chatzitza. But isn't there another issue? If the Kohen is wearing this on his finger, then that means that what? It interposes between his hand and the avoda. To which the Gemara says bismol. Not a problem, it's on his left hand. Inami shelo b'makom avoda. Or the other possibility is it's on a place of his hand where it won't interfere with the avoda. We'll say, for example, what? For example, the back of his hand. Right? The Kohen is only doing avoda with the front of his hand. So therefore, again, let's say the injury is on the back of his hand. So there's no issue with chatzitza. So the Gemara says, Upligi de Rava. And this argues on Rava. What does Rava say? Da'am Rava, Amrav Chista, B'makom, Begadim, Afilu Nema Achas Chotzetzes. Because we'll say, Rava says in the name of Chista, that if the Kohen is wearing something additional, B'makom, Begadim, or if it's talking about a place on his body, which normally, again, the big day kahuna lay against, Afilu Nema Achas Chotzetzes. Even, I will say, one string could serve as a chatzitza. Shabbos says quite a dramatic idea. We'll discuss this in your death in just a moment. That according to this logic, even if the Kohen has a thread on his body, and that thread is b'makom begadim, on a place on his body where the big tikkun is supposed to sit, that thread creates a chatzitza issue. Shelo b'makom begadim, you know, say ultimately again on a place of his body which is not normally clothed by big tikkun. Shalosh al shalosh chotzitzos, pachos mikan eno chotzitzos. Only an item that is at least, there will say 3 finger breadths, right? 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths poses a chatzitza, but less than that does not create a chatzitza. To which the Gemara says, Ad Rabbi Yochanan vaday pliga. So this statement certainly argues on Rabbi Yochanan, Ad Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chia milei med pliga. But does it argue ultimately again on Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chia? Shiny tziltzil katan dechashiv. Ultimately again, I will say the tziltzil katan, if the coin is actively wearing what we call the tziltzil katan. The tziltzil katan will say means the small belt. I keep saying belt. I don't know if belt is the right. Tziltzil literally is a belt, a small a bandage. But again, I will say a more significant item. So that's different because it's chashiv. Lishnachin, I will say another possibility is Amrle Rabbi Yehuda Breit Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Yehuda said. Rabbi Yehuda said. Rabbi Yehuda son of Rabbi Chia said, Lo shanu ela gemi. When did we learn that it's permitted for the coin to apply some type of bandage? That's only for talking about a reed of grass. About tziltzil katan chotzeitz. But if he applies ultimately again a small belt, that will create a chatzitza issue. Rabbi Yochanan amar lo amru chatzitza b'pachos mishalosh al shalosh ela b'makom begadim. Rabbi Yochanan said, I will say, when do we say that there is that something could create a chatzitza issue, even if it's less than shalosh al shalosh? That's only if it's being worn b'makom begadim. Aval shelo b'makom begadim. But I will say at the end of the day, if it's being worn shelo b'makom begadim, then what? Shalosh al shalosh chotzitzos, pachos mikan eno chotzetzes. Then ultimately again, if it's 3 by 3, it poses a chatzitza issue. If it's less than 3 by 3, then it does not. V'hainu de Rava, and ultimately, I will say this would be in line with the sheet of Rava. Amar Chisda, lema pligid Rabbi Yehuda Breit Rabbi Chia. Why don't you say that he is arguing on Rabbi Yehuda Breit Rabbi Chia? Shiny tziltzil katan dechashiv. I will say the case of tziltzil katan will be different. Why? Because ultimately, again, because it's not just the gemi, it's not just a reed of grass. Therefore, it has a chashivus. Ul Rabbi Yochanan, my irya gemi lishma inan tziltzil katan. I will say, and according to Rabbi Yochanan's approach, why does the Bryce have to illustrate this? Why does the Gemara have to illustrate this with the case of gemi, a reed of grass? He could have also said it's just the case of tziltzil katan. Milsa agav orchei kamash malon. The Gemara will say is teaching me a simple concept, which is the gemi masi. So they will say, why would a person apply a reed of grass to their wound? Because apparently, again, certain types of reeds or certain types of gemi were known to have curative powers. So because of that, a person would apply it. By Rava. So we'll say, listen to this. So along these same lines, the Gemara now is going to go ahead and address a whole variety of issues. So we'll say, there's a lot to say in these halachas in general with Big Day Kahuna and in terms of what goes ahead. Here, I'll just tell you this one halacha, because again, so this is in Perek Yud Halacha Tes of Avodas Klei HaMikdash Va'odim Bo. So the Rambam paskins as follows: Kohen shalaka betzbo, if a Kohen had a wound on his finger, mutter lichroch ale gemi b'Shabbos, o beget she'in bo shalosh al shalosh va'oved. So he's permitted to go ahead and put a gemi on it, put the reed of grass on it, or a garment, all right, a piece of cloth, as long as it doesn't measure, as long as it is less than 3 by 3. So we'll say, so now the Rambam here is talking about 2 things. Number one is, first he's talking about Shabbos. He's echoing the sentiment of the Gemara that a Kohen could apply this on Shabbos. What about Refuah? It's not only, but it's an Issur D'Rabbanan, and the Issur D'Rabbanan doesn't apply in the Beis HaMikdash. Furthermore, again, B'miskavin lahotzi dam aser. If it's the Kohen's intention to draw blood from the wound, then it will be aser, because it will say then that's an Issur D'Oraisa of Shechita. V'hu shelo yachotz hagemi o habeged bein b'sara l'kli b'shas avot. And I'm also saying this is referring to the specific case of what? Of the gemi or the garment that is on the hand. So now the Rambam gives the other qualification that the reason this is also permitted is assuming what? That it does not in any way interpose between the hand and the avoda. So either we're talking about a case where it's on his left hand or it's on the back side of the hand, but obviously the Kohen cannot operate, we'll say, with a bandage that interposes between himself and the avoda that he's doing. Okay, so that's how the Rambam paskin. So alocha lemaisa, he could have the gemi, or he could have the cloth that's less than 3 by 3. Because we'll say, what do you see from here? That according to the Rambam, if the bandage is more than 3 by 3, you get into an issue of what? Of yitor begadim. You get into an issue that potentially that's more significant, and potentially that is considered as if the Kohen is adding on kohanic vestments. Next, by Rava. Let's listen to these interesting cases. Nichnas al ruach bebigdal mahu. Let's listen to this. Let's say the Kohen is doing the avoda, and there's a gust of wind, and the wind goes into his clothing, kind of blowing the clothing off his flesh. So we'll say, so the idea is that the clothing is not sitting flush against his skin. The wind comes in and blows out the clothing a little bit. So the Gemara says, Mahu, what's the halacha? In other words, let's say he's in the middle of doing the avoda when this happens. Mahu, what's the halacha? Al bisaroba inan v'halaka. Do we require the clothing to be on the flesh? And we'll say, and that is lacking over here. O dilma derech levisha bekach. Or do we say, no, the goal is the Kohen has to wear the clothing in a normative fashion. As long as he's wearing it in a normative fashion, the fact that it blows it off his flesh a little bit, that's not a problem. Kina, another question. What happens if he has a louse, right? Kina, ma'u shetachos. We'll say, does the presence of a louse go ahead and create some type of chatzitza? So the Gemara says, say if the louse is dead, then certainly again it creates a chatzitza issue. So the Gemara says, Chayamai. What happens if the louse is alive? So we'll say, first wide line, New Testament Aleph. Do we say that ultimately since lice come and go, therefore again this is considered to be a normative thing, and it's part of his body, and it's not a chatzitza? O Dilma, Kevan de kapit Allah chaitza. Or maybe because what? Maybe because he's makbid on. In other words, he doesn't want lice. So therefore, I will say maybe it poses a chatzitza issue. Afar ma'ushi yachad. So we'll say, what about dust? What about dust? So the Gemara, actually, I should say it's dirt. So they're not dust. So we're going to see a chilik between dirt and dust. So what about dirt? Ma'ushi yachad. Afar vadechayitz. So of course, it goes without saying that what? That dirt is going to pose a chatzitza. We'll say nobody wants dirt on their body. So of course, it's going to pose a chatzitza. Ela avak afar mahu. We'll say, what not dirt? What about dust? What about dust? So dust, we'll say, is a normal thing. So that's always around, especially in Eretz Yisrael, especially in Yerushalayim. So I'll say, so what about dust? Does dust pose a chatzitza? So the Gemara says, Ma'u, what's the halacha? Beis hashechi ma'u sheyachotz al b'sara. Excuse me, ma'u sheyachotz. So what about the armpit? Does the armpit pose a chatzitza? And I will say, now when it comes to the armpit, what the Gemara is asking over here is as follows. If you look at Rashi, this is Rashi 5 lines up from before it gets wide. Beis hashechi mahu. Avir beis hashechi kagom batis ra'osav shachaluko shurachav. Inonogev beis hashechi mahu shiyachosar chuchu batis ra'osav dechukim inogim basar. Say, the big day kahuna did not go up into the armpit. The big day kahuna essentially rested below the armpit. So the shaila is the fact that the big day kahuna doesn't go up into the armpit. Does that pose a chatzitza? Meaning, is that considered as if the garment is not resting on the Kohen's flesh? Do we need the big day kahuna to be on every part of the flesh and it's lacking? Or do we say no? This is the way that the clothing is worn. Also, listen to this interesting case. Let's say the Kohen is going on doing the avoda, and in the midst of the avoda, he puts his hand in his shirt. He puts his hand in his shirt, just like to rest his hand on his chest. But in that moment, what's happening? His hand is between his flesh and the big day kahuna. So we'll say, Mahu, does that pose a chatzitza or not? Gufo michayitz olo. We'll say, do we say that in general, again, a chatzitza is something that is a foreign or alien object, right? But your own body doesn't pose a chatzitza. My hand, which is part of my body, does not pose a chatzitza between my body and the big day kahuna. Nema ma'u shetachos. We'll say, what about if there's a thread? What happens if there's a thread on the Rashi says, it's the first white line in Rashi, Mashma da'asya me'alma. There's a thread on my body. I'm the Kohen, there's a thread on my body. And so therefore, again, I will say it's sitting in between my body and the big day kahuna. Does that pose a chatzitza? To which the Gemara says, Neima vale chaitza. Of course, if there's a thread there, it poses a chatzitza issue. Ella, Neima miduldeles mahu. Rather, I will say, the Gemara asks as follows. What happens if the big day kahuna has a thread that began to unravel, and that thread is resting on my body? Does that pose a chatzitza or not? So, boy, Mar Bravashi, we'll say another question that Mar Bravashi asked. Yotza Sa'aro bebigdo mahu. We'll say, what happens if the Kohen's hair got very long and his hair goes down his back into the big day kahuna? Mahu, what's the halacha? Does that pose a chatzitza? Saro ki gufo dami. Do we say that one's hair is like his body and therefore again doesn't pose a chatzitza? Olav ki gufo dami. Or do we say no, hair is not like part of the body and therefore it does pose a chatzitza? By Reb Zera, tefillin ma'u she'achotzu. What about tefillin? Well, so what about if the Kohen is wearing his tefillin? Now specifically, again, there seems to be an issue by the shal yad, as we'll see in just a moment. If the Kohen is wearing his shal yad, well, for that matter, we'll see the shal rosh as well, and we'll see, do tefillin pose a chatzitza? To which the Gemara says, Aliba demand amra laila lavzman tefillin hu. So it's according to the opinion who holds that nighttime is not the appropriate time for tefillin, lo tibari lecha. So we'll say, if you hold that nighttime is not the right time for tefillin, then it goes without saying that it is a chatzitza. Why? Kivan dalayla chaitzi, yom nami chaitzi. So you're supposed to listen to this. If you hold that Laila is lavzman tefillin, if you hold that nighttime is not the time for tefillin, that means everyone would agree that what? That if the Kohen wore the tefillin by night, it's certainly what? Would be a chatzitza. But we'll say, once it's a chatzitza by night, you'd have to say that it's a chatzitza by day as well. Because the idea would be it doesn't make either something is a chatzitza or it's not a chatzitza. So in other words, there's no such thing as it being a chatzitza and now not being a chatzitza then. So if you hold that laila lavs man tefillin, that means nighttime is nighttime tefillin is a chatzitza. If it's a chatzitza by night, it's a chatzitza by day. Kiti by lecha. So where does the shaila come up? Leman amar laila zman tefillin. So according to the opinion holds, we'll say that tefillin could be worn both by day and by night. Now I have a shayla. Does tefillin constitute a chatzitz or not? My mitzvah de gufe chayitz olo chayitz. So do we say that a mitzvah that is upon the body of the Kohen, does that mitzvah have the ability to create a chatzitza situation or not? Il galgil milsa. So we'll say, so this question, literally galgil milsa means it rolled, meaning the question kind of took on a traction of its own. Umatal kamed Rabbi Ami. And it was presented before Rabbi Ami. What did Rabbi Ami say? Amalei Talmud Aruchu Biadenu. This is an explicit ruling. Tefillin chotzitzos. Rabbi Ami said, that's an easy one. We have an explicit ruling that what? Tefillin, in fact, does pose a chatzitza issue, and therefore it is problematic. Meisvei, Gemara says, really? You're going to raise a kasha. Kohanim ba'avodasan ulevim b'duchanan v'yisrael ma'amadan. Supposed to listen to this. The Kohanim, when they're doing the avodah, I will say Levim b'duchanan means the Levim when they go to sing. I will say it's actually very interesting. We call Birchas Kohanim duchaning. But interestingly enough, I don't know exactly when that term came into use, but I'll tell you it's a little bit misleading. I'll tell you why. The statement duchan was the platform upon which the Levim used to sing shira. So the truth is, we call it duchaning because the Kohen ascend, right? They go up to the duchan, they go up to the platform. But duchaning, so to speak, although it's not really a verb, right? Duchaning was, going up to the duchan was a reference to the Levim going to sing shira. So Rabbi says, listen to this. So when the Kohanim are doing the avodah, the Levim are doing their shira, V'yisrael ma'amada, and the Yisrael doing ma'amada. So we'll say, ma'amada is something we said, remember again, Mesechus Tainis. Take a look at what we'll say in Rashi, it's 5 lines up from the bottom. Yisrael ma'amada, kol al kol mishmar u'mishmar haya ma'amad shel Yisrael b'Yushalayim. Both say the same way that there are shifts of Kohanim and shifts of Leviim. There are also shifts of Yisraelim. So we'll say, what did they do? They ultimately gathered in Yerushalayim. Sheba'in va'omdin ba'azara b'shas ha'tamid. Vein shluchei kol Yisrael la'amol dar karban. So let's listen to this. The Yisraelim were also split up into shifts. And at different intervals, they were stationed in the Beis HaMikdash, and they were there representing Klal Yisrael. Why were they there representing Klal Yisrael? Because they both say the carbon tamid is a carbon seaborn. So just like again for a regular carbon, it's good for the bailim, it's good for the owners to be present. For the carbon tamid, we wanted the owners to be present as well. Who are the owners of the carbon tamid? Klal Yisrael. Therefore, there was a representation of Klal Yisrael who was stationed in the Beis HaMikdash for these karbanos. So we'll say, so all these individuals, peturim minat tefillah or minat tefillin. We'll say, so all these individuals are pater from davening, right, and pater from tefillin. Now, this is actually quite interesting. If you look at Rashi, peturim minat tefillah she'yicholin lechavin. They're pater from davening because they can't have correct kavanah. Or minat tefillin, the kaimalana osek b'mitzvah pater minat mitzvah. And we'll say they're patur from tefillin because since they're engaged in one mitzvah, they're exempt from tefillin. So what does that mean? My love, im hinichan einan chotzitzos. So what does that mean? Doesn't that mean if they put it on, it would not pose a chatzitza? To which the Gemara says, lo, im hinichan chotzitzos. No, that's not true. What it means to say is, if they put on tefillin, usually by the kohanim, it poses a chatzitza. If that's the case, ihachi piturim asurim miboile. We'll say, if tefillin poses a chatzitza for the big day kahuna, then don't tell me that the kohen is pater from tefillin. Tell me that what? It is usher for him to put on tefillin. To which the Gemara says, you're right, but kevan de'igal aviyim yisra de lo masnale aser mishum haki tana peturin. You're right, but except here's the problem. The problem is, the peturin applies to Yisraelim and to Levim. Kohanim really are usher to do it, according to this version of the Gemara. But we use Lashon HaPater because we want to maintain a certain level of what we'll call textual symmetry. So therefore, we're not going to say Kohanim are Asurim, Levim, Yisraelim are Peturim. We just say everyone is Pater. So the Gemara says as follows: Mishum hachi tan Peturim. V'atanya im hinichan inan chotzitzos. But once we learned in a brayso that if a Kohen did put on tefillin, it does not pose a chatzitza. So it seems to indicate over here that tefillin do not pose a chatzitza. Lo kashya hadiyad hadirosh. What's the second contradiction? When we say that tefillin poses a chatzitza, that's tefillin shal yad. When the brayso says that the tefillin doesn't pose a chatzitza, that's what? Tefillin shal rosh. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. So what you say the tefillin shal, why does it pose a chatzitza? Because the pasuk says yilbash al basaro, he should wear the clothing against his flesh, which means there should be nothing between his clothing and the flesh. I don't understand. The rosh namiksiv, by the shalosh, it also says the samta hamitznefes al rosho. Rosai says that you should put the mitznefes on your head. Tana, so Rosai, so you see over here the mitznefes. The mitznefes is the turban. Thank you. That. Right? Ultimately, again, it has to be put on his head. So you see that halacha l'maisa again. There can't be anything interposing between that and his head as well. Tana Sarah Hayanira bein sitz l'mitznefes. Also, we have another explanation that the Kohen. This is talking about the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol's hair was visible between the tzitz and the mitznefes. So also remember again, the tzitz was the gold plate that he wore like by his forehead area that said Kodesh Lashem. There was a space that his hair was visible between the mitznefes, the hat, with the turban, and the tzitz. So what would happen there, Bosai? So the Gemara says, Shesham Amud Beis, Shesham Manichin Tefillin. That ultimately there would be a place ultimately for tefillin. So Bosai, the point that the Gemara makes over here is that halacha l'maisa, the tefillin would not pose, the tefillin shal rosh, I should say, would not pose a chatzitza, ultimately again on the rosh. It would only pose a chatzitza ultimately by the yad. So Bosai, just so you should know, interestingly enough, the way the Rambam paskins over here is as follows. The Rambam says, I'm going to read this to you. He says, Ne'emar b'big day kahuna al b'sara u'levesham. This is in Perek Yud Halacha Vav Avoda Hilchos Klei Mikdash. So now big day kahuna al b'sara u'levesham. The pasuk says by big day kahuna that you have to wear it on your flesh. V'lamei shlo yedavar chotzeitz bein b'sara u'lebegadim. Afilu nema achas O afar o kina mesa im haisa ben misar lebeged harizu chatzitza v'dasa psula. We'll say if there's any kind of chatzitza in between the garment and his flesh, the avoda is pasul. Lefichach ein hakohen yachol la'avod b'tilin shal yad shahari chotzatzes. So we'll say the Rambam Paskins is the kohen cannot wear tefillin shal yad because that poses a chatzitza. Aval shal rosh ina chotzatzes. But ultimately, again, the shalosh does not pose a chatzitza. Therefore, ve'imratza lahanicham b'shas avoda maniach. Therefore, again, if the kohen wants to wear his tefillin shal yad at the time of the avoda, he has the ability to do so. Good. Mechusar. Shalosh, thank you. Shalosh at the time of the avoda, he has the ability to do so. Mechusar kippurim. So let's remember again the next case in the Mishnah of a kohen whose avoda is invalid is a mechusar kippurim. Let's say somebody ultimately is lacking a toma, which means someone who still has some outstanding carbonic obligations that he has to bring in order to affect his kapara. Meanwhile, and where do we know this from? Amar Avuna Amar Kra, v'chipra aleh kohen v'tahira. The pasuk says the kohen shall atone, and she will become purified. Tara michlal shitameh. Fine. And we'll say ultimately again, if there was no washing of the hands and feet, if the kohen didn't wash his hands and feet prior to doing the avoda is possible. So asya chuka mechusar. So also remember again, this is the Gzera Shava from yesterday. The Gzeir Shav of Chuka, Bosai taught me a variety of different halachos. Among them is that if the Kohen did not do Richitzas Yadayim Raglayim, if he didn't wash his hands and feet prior to the avoda, ultimately again, the avoda will be compromised. Tan Rabbanon, Kohen Gadol Shalo Taval for Shalo Kiddush. Bosai, if the Kohen Gadol did not go to the mikvah and did not do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, Bein Beged LeBeged or Bein Avoda LaAvoda. Va'avad Avodaso. So now we're transitioning for just a moment to speak about Yom Kippur. So this is talking about Yom Kippur. So we'll say, so what's happening over here? What happens if the Kohen Gadol? So ideally, what's happening is, we read this in Musaf, the Kohen Gadol changes his clothing a number of times throughout the Avodah of Yom Kippur. Ideally, between each clothing change, two things happen. Number one, there is an immersion in a mikvah, and there is Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, a sanctification of the hands and feet. What happens if the Kohen did not go to the mikvah and did not do the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim bein beged lebeged, between one clothing change and the next, or bein avoda la'avoda, or between one part of the sacrificial service and the next? But yet he continued doing that. We'll say, what's the halacha? Kshera. The halacha is, even though ideally lechatchila he is supposed to go to the mikvah and sanctify his hands and feet in between every clothing change and avoda change, if he didn't do so, the avodah is still kosher. Ve'echad kohen gadol, ve'echad kohen hedyot, shelo kidesh yadav v'raglav shachris v'avad avodaso. We'll say, what happens if the kohen gadol, or a regular kohen for that matter, failed to do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim the morning that they come to do the avodah? We'll say, so what's the halacha? Avodaso psula. We'll say, in that case, the avodah is possible. So we'll say, here's the distinction. Apparently, if you don't do the initial Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim in the morning, and you do the avodah, remember again, before the Kohen would do anything in the Beis HaMikdash, the first thing he would do was sanctify his hands and feet. If he does not do that, then the avodah ultimately is possible. Amrli Rabbi Asi, Rabbi Yochanan, Michti, let's analyze this. Chamish Tevilos, Vasar Kiddushin Da'araisa, V'chuka Ksiv, Beholi Akvu. I don't understand. Let's say the immersions and the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim of Yom Kippur is daraisa. If it's daraisa, then what? That if the Kohen doesn't do it, if Kohen Gadol doesn't do it, then what? Then the avodah should be compromised. Yet the same way that if the Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Hedyot doesn't do the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim in the morning, that the avodah is compromised as well. Yet we see that that is not the case. Amar lei, Amar kra, ulavei sham. I will say ultimately again by the avodah of Yom Kippur. So the pasuk says, "Ulavei sham," he will wear them. The visha ma'akeres, it is the wearing of the proper kohanic vestments, which has the ability ultimately to compromise the avodah. That is ma'akev. Ve'ein davar achar ma'akev, but nothing else is ma'akev in the avodah. As long as the kohen gadol is wearing the correct clothing, the avodah is good. Even if he failed to go ahead and do the necessary immersions or sanctification of the hands and feet, ultimately again the avodah will still be good. Savu pana. So let's listen to this. Rabbi Asi was very happy, right? Because he felt that there was a good explanation of his halacha. Amar le vav afusa kasvilacha. So I'll say ultimately again, Rabbi Yochanan responded. He said, "Don't get so excited." I'll say literally what this means is, I wrote for you the letter vav on a wooden log, which I guess is a Talmudic expression. If you try to write the letter vav on a wooden log, I'll say what happens. The vav is not going to look straight. Rather, it's going to be all shaky. So the idea is, I guess, when you gave someone a shaky answer, you would say, "I wrote for you a vav on a wooden log." Okay, you could use that one. Ihachi, if that's the case, Ihachi did safranami. I don't understand. If that's the case, then based on what you're telling me is, even if the Kohen Gadol failed to do the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim in the morning, that should also not be ma'akev the avodah. In other words, then that the avodah should still be good. Because at the end of the day, you're telling me that the only thing that truly matters by Yom Kippur Rabosai is what? Is that the Kohen Gadol goes ahead and wears the Kohanic vestments. But halacha l'maisa, again, if he's wearing the Kohanic vestments, then what? Then halacha l'maisa, even if he failed to go ahead and do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, the avodah should still be good. But yet again, Amar Chizkiah, Amar Kra, V'haisa lahem chak olam lo l'zar l'darasam. The pasuk says, This is actually V'rachatzu ragleim yadeim v'ragleim v'lo yamusu. This is the pasuk of Kiddush ragleim. They shall sanctify their hands and their feet. They shall not die. V'yisalahem chak olam lo luzaro dorosam. It will be an everlasting statute for them and for their offspring forever. Davar hama'akiv bizaro ma'akiv bo. We'll say whatever ultimately again is ma'akiv bizaro, which we'll say is another way of saying whatever applies to regular kohanim is ma'akiv for the kohen gadol. Davar she'in ma'akiv bizaro ein ma'akiv bo. We'll say ultimately again things that are not ma'akiv for his offspring ultimately again are not ma'akiv for him. If you take a look at Rashi, so we'll say this is Rashi bizaro. It's like probably halfway down in the shorter lines of Rashi. Bizaro, bekohanim had yotim, dahainu kiddush shebishas kenisa, shenoi bechala kohanim ma'akiv ba'arav yom kippurim da'chuka ksiv. So this is actually quite interesting. Gemara Darshan is essentially anything that is part of everyday service for every kohen is ma'akiv by the kohen gadol on Yom Kippur. Anything that is not part of the everyday service for every single kohen is not ma'akiv on Yom Kippur. Therefore, again, as we said before, if the kohen gadol fails to go ahead and do tevilah or wash his hands and feet in between the various clothing or avodah changes, the avodah is still good. But if he fails to do the Kiddush Raglayim, first thing upon coming to the Beis HaMikdash in the morning of Yom Kippur, that is ma'akiv. The avodah will be possible. Why? Because that obligation applies to everyone. So Rabbi Yonasan or Mehach, Rabbi Yonasan said from here, "V'rachatzu mimenu Moshe v'Aaron ubanav." The pasuk says, literally, they will wash from it Moshe, Aaron, and his sons. Davar ha'ma'akiv bebanav ma'akiv bo. Something about that is ma'akiv for his sons, which is another way of saying the same thing, just a different pasuk. Something that is ma'akiv for Aaron's sons, which is another way of saying something which is ma'akiv for a kohen hedyot, a regular kohen. Ultimately, again, is ma'akiv. Is necessary for the kohen gadol. Davar she'ino ma'akiv b'banav, but something that is not necessary or is not ma'akiv for his sons, ein ma'akiv bo. Ultimately, again, is not a necessity for him. So again, therefore, kiddush raglayim in the morning, washing your hands and your feet in the morning, coming to the Beis HaMikdash, which is what? An indispensable necessity for all Kohanim, for all ages, for the sons of Aaron, becomes a necessity for Aaron as well. A necessity for Aaron when? On Yom Kippur. So even though again, if he failed to do the sanctification of the hands and feet or the immersions between clothing changes or between avodos, ultimately the avodah is still kosher. If he fails to do the initial kiddush raglayim in the morning, that will be ma'akiv. Rabbi Yonasan, my time lo amar midchizkiah. So we'll say, why does Rabbi Yonasan not learn out from the same source as Chizkiah? Amar lacha hahula doros udichsiv. Because he holds that pasuk was written for future generations. V'idach, my time lo amar mehai. And I will say, ultimately, again, why does Chizkiah not learn out from Rabbi Yochanan? So the Gemara says, he needs that pasuk ultimately to teach in the statement of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Dam Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Also, is actually very interesting. Kol kiyur shein bo k'di l'kadesh arba kana mimenu in mekadshin bo. We'll say he uses that pasuk of Moshe of v'rachatzu mimenu Moshe v'Aaron ubanav to teach you something different. We'll say the kiyur. The kiyur was, we translate kiyur as a sink, but it's really much more of like a wash basin. The wash basin that was in the Mishkan and ultimately again later on in the Beis HaMikdash had minimum dimensions. It had to hold enough water to be able to provide for the washing of the hands and the feet of 4 Kohanim. We'll say, where do we get that from? Shnei Amar, v'rachatzu mimenu, we'll say first wide line, Moshe v'Aaron ubanav. Because we'll say, what does the pasuk say about the kiyur? And they shall wash from it Moshe, Aaron, and his sons. Whose sons are we referring to? So right. So we'll say, you'll say to yourself, one second, Aaron had 4 sons, so that should be a minimum of 6 people. The way the Gemara actually will say is just based on the minimum definition of banav. Banav, by definition, the lowest definition, the minimum definition is 2. Therefore, by definition, also, it's actually quite interesting. We use this passage to teach us that the kiyur ultimately must be capable of retaining enough water to wash 4 kohanim. Ten Rabbana. So we'll say, watch this. Now we get a little bit into the substance here. Ketzad mitzvahs kiddush. We'll say, how do you do this kiddush on raglayim? How do you affect this sanctification of the hands and feet? So what do? Maniach yado hayimanis al gabe raglo hayimanis v'yado hasmalis al gabe raglo hasmalis makadesh. What do? You put your right hand on your right foot and your left hand on your left foot, right? And what? You turn on the water and you wash the hands and the feet simultaneously. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Omer, Maniach shtei yodov zu al gav zu, va'al gabe shtei raglosav zu al gabe zu umekadish. Rabbi Yosef has a very interesting balancing act over here. He says you take both of your hands, right? You wash them like that. Then you take both of your feet, you place one foot on top of the other, and you wash both feet with both hands. So the Gemara says, Amru lo hiflagta. So they said to him, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, you're kind of getting a little bit carried away. It's impossible to do that and maintain your balance. So essentially what you're doing is you're standing on one foot while simultaneously washing two hands and 2 feet. So the Gemara says, Shapir Kamrile. That's a good point. In other words, how does Rabbi Yossi require this? Rabbi Yossi v'chavero misayo. So Rabbi Yossi says, no. In Rabbi Yossi's model, one coin of Osai is really leaning on a second coin. That at the time of Kiddush Raglayim, either my fellow coin is holding me up, or I'm leaning against him. So we'll say, what's the nafkamina between these two approaches? So we have a machlokes as to how Kiddush Raglayim was accomplished. First opinion says one hand on one foot. Second opinion says one foot on top of the, first wash one hand on top of the other, then 1 foot on top of the other, and wash both feet with both hands, one on top of the other. What's the nafkamina? Rabbi, amida min atzad ikav. So the nafkamina is Amida min atzad. If you look at Rashi, it's about 7 lines up from before Rashi gets wide. Amida min atzad kigonzu she'eno bilo siyua. We'll say, for example, this individual who was washing without being helped, right? L'rabbanan lo havya amida. Kigonzu she'eno bilo siyua. This one requires help. L'rabbanan lo havya amida. Va'ana amida b'nei kiddush karm. We'll say, we're going to see in just a moment that kiddush raglayim has to be done while standing up. The shaila is being supported by another coin considered to be standing up or not? According to the first opinion, the answer to that is no. That Kiddush Raglayim has to be accomplished one hand, 1 foot at a time. According to the second opinion, the answer is yes. I don't understand. Why don't you just sit down? Right? Why doesn't the coin just sit down and do the Kiddush Raglayim? Amakra l'sharis, because also when talking about Kiddush Raglayim, the Torah uses the lashon of the sharis to serve, v'sheirus mu'umatu, and it will say serving in the Beis Hamikdash must be done in a state of amida. It will say how do we pass? The pass is like the first approach that maniach yadu hayimanis al gabi raglo hayimanis v'yadu asmalas al gabi raglo asmalas umekadesh. That you put your right hand on your right foot, your left hand on your left foot, and you wash like that. All that done in order to not require the kohen to have to lean on anyone else, because we will say leaning generally in halacha is not the equivalent of standing. We will say it's a very important halacha. That's by Shmuel Esrei. You can't lean on something because it's not like standing. By Mikra Megillah, the Mishnah Berurah points out that the Baal Kori shouldn't lean on the Amud because ultimately, again, that's not like standing. So for Kiddush and Raglayim, also we want the kohen to be able to stand up on his own weight. 10 Rabbanon. Kiddush Adav Raglav Bayom. This is actually a very interesting case. What happens if the kohen came to the base and he comes to work in the morning, does Kiddush Raglayim in the morning, and then Rabbi say what happens? He works through the night. So the shaila is, does he need another Kiddush Raglayim at night? So the halacha is no. If he did it by morning, that lasts through the night. By Layla, Rabbi. But listen to this. What happens if he came to work at night? He did Kiddush Raglayim at night. Does he need another Kiddush Raglayim the next morning? So Rabbi says the answer to that is yes. He will require another Kiddush Raglayim the next morning. Why? Rabbi Omer Lina Mo'elas beKiddush Raglayim. Because also Rabbi says essentially, once the night is over and the new day dawns, he requires another Kiddush. Your Kiddush Raglayim both sides maximum lasts you from one morning through the night. But once again the night is over and the new day comes, each day will require its own new Kiddush Raglayim. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Ein Lina Ma'elas beKiddush Raglayim. Rabbi Lazar says no. Nighttime, Rabbi say literally again, a nighttime period does not go ahead and bring to a close your Kiddush Raglayim. Which Rabbi says is another way of saying that according to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, as long as you have not left the Beis Hamikdash and you have not had Hesach Hadas, you have not had a lapse of concentration, one Kiddush Raglayim could take you a long way. Tanya Idach, what's another brayso that says, if a kohen was working in the Beis Hamikdash and he was offering karbanos or really burning leftovers, limbs and fats all night, li'ora ta'un kilush na'im raglaim divrei Rebbe. The next morning, he requires a new sanctification of his hands and his feet. These are the words of Rabbi. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kevan shekidish yadav v'raglav mitchila savoda. So Rabbi Shimon says, once he did kiddush raglaim, we'll say, then what? In the beginning of the avoda, afilu mikan va'ad asara yomim eino tzarech lekadesh. We'll say, even if he works in the Beis Hamikdash straight for 10 days, he does not require another kiddush raglaim. In other words, we'll say, once you've done kiddush raglaim, as long as you have A, not left the Beis Hamikdash, and B, not have any kind of lapse of awareness, one sanctification goes a long way. To which the Gemara says, now we just had two statements, two braisos that say the same thing. Why do we need both? I thought it just said the first one. Because we'll say that would be where Rabbi says you need another kiddush raglaim. Why? Because we'll say you stop between one avodah and the next. Rabbi Shimon. But again, we'll say in the second case where there was no stoppage in between avodos, maybe Rabbi agrees with Rabbi Shimon. And if it would have just said ultimately again the second one, Rabbi Shimon Well, say it would only been in this case. Rabbi Shimon holds his sheet, but perhaps in the other case he would ultimately hold like Rabbi. Therefore, we'll say each case brings its own unique peculiarity, brings its own unique aspect, and therefore again both must be stated. So we'll say we end off over here today with this fundamental machlokus between Rabbi and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon about what happens in the event that how long does one kiddush adayim raglayim last you. Rabbi holds that kiddush adayim raglayim maximum has a 24-hour shelf life, maximum works until the next day, but once the next day comes, each new day requires its own new kiddush raglayim, whereas Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon says, no, the halacha is, one kiddush raglayim will say lasts you as long as what? You don't leave the Beis Hamikdash and don't have a lapse of awareness. We'll continue Me'ez Hashem with the understanding of this machlokas tomorrow.